Hello, Alan.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Wonderful, sir. Glad you could be a part of the action today. We
Hey, thanks
have
for having me.
Alan Hogan, aka OMAD Dad, from his YouTube channel, and he's with us today for uh, for the party. So, lay it on us, man. What's your game?
Well, first, I want to say thanks for having me. And, you know, I have to give a really big thank you and praise to you because your channel has helped literally thousands of people. And I am one of them. I'm one of the success stories on my YouTube channel, OMAD Dad, as you mentioned. I document my journey going on almost 3 years now of just following your advice, sticking to OMAD, and trying to help a few people along the way.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Mine was, as you know, my story was kind of unintentional, kind of a something I did passed on because I was asked, and so that I didn't think anything would ever come of it. When it did, it was a little bit of a shock to me, and then a lot of other people have said similar things. So start, I guess, from the beginning, and what's your give us your background, what it is you do, and all of that fun stuff.
Okay, I am a chef by trade, um, and my whole intro to this is, I guess, probably around 10 years or so ago. Um, I kind of experimented with fasting a little bit. I don't know if you remember, Brad Pilon made a book called Eat, Stop, Eat,
Yeah.
where
Yes.
he briefly talked about, twice a day having the equivalent of an OMAD, but at the time it was kind of, that you don't want to do any more than that.
Right.
And so I had that, and I experiment here and there with a little bit of fasting, and I noticed that it would, like, the next day I couldn't eat as much, and it would shrink my stomach. But then it kind of went out of my awareness, and I I ballooned up to, just before my daughter was born, I ballooned up to 235 pounds, and I'm 5'9", and I could tell you my asthma was giving me problems every day. My joints hurt, my back hurt. I had trouble sleeping. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, and I was just miserable. And after my daughter was born, and I looked at pictures of myself, and I said, I'm gonna have to take this weight off, um, because I have a child to care for now. I just tired of feeling miserable. Um, Another kicker for me as well was, with the sleep apnea. I It worked out so that, like, somehow during the night I got a CPAP machine, and somehow during the night I would, like, swat it off my face unconsciously, or um, and they had some way of uh, sending it back to the doctor's office, that information, how many hours you're using it in night. Well, by me swatting it off like that, I became, I wasn't eligible through insurance to keep having this machine. You have to use it a certain number of hours a night. So my doctor said, well, you have two options. You could either pay for the machine, which was extremely expensive, or, another thing you might want to do is lose some weight, because, losing a little bit of weight, it's been shown to help sleep apnea. And, we could try putting in for CPAP machine, with your insurance later on. So I think it was the combination of that. And I said, I have to do something, because I'm tired of feeling miserable. And I had tried the Paleo Diet, um, and I think the only thing I lost was a little extra cash out of my wallet. I mean, that's an expensive diet if you follow it to the T, extremely restrictive. Um,
Yeah.
I've
Sure.
tr- I went low carb, and then I would run into this. I'd be fine for a couple of weeks, and then you go over to your family's house or friend's house, and, like, oh, we're having pizza, and I'm supposed to be like, no, sorry, I'll just have some lettuce that you have in your fridge. Um,
Yeah.
so event eventually I stumbled onto your channel, and I said, I'm gonna give this a try, and, what if I have to lose? And you were right. I mean, it took about a good 4 or 5 days to kind of get used to it, in the swing of it, to where I wasn't going out of my mind with a little bit of hunger. But um, I had such amazing results that, and it was the weight was coming off fast, and I found that I could eat what I wanted. And
Yes.
that was huge for me because since I was a kid, I've loved just a good burger. And I hate eating a burger wrapped in lettuce. It just doesn't really work for me. You go to, they have that. I
Are
don't know.
launching a similar thing. They're doing the, well, you can cover your bread with kale and endives and all of this, and it's like, no, it's like it's not the same. It's just not the same.
It's not.
And let me jump
Yep.
in with the CPAP madness there. I had my own on that. I in 2003 they recommended one for me because I had such terrible sleep apnea and would wake up coughing and choking and gasping and wheezing. And of course, you're exactly right with asthma. It makes asthma worse if there's any lung congestion. If there's any just normal colds, you can develop walking pneumonia because the fluid you retain as a big guy or gal tends to coagulate in the lungs, tends to push some of the fluid to where you go around and these people are wheezing like a big person. You can be around them and then they're wheezing all the time, and it's like they have a case of walking pneumonia or something, but they're not. They're just carrying a lot of fluid. I had
Right.
the same thing, and CPAP. I kept knocking it off. It's so funny you mentioned that. I had the same problem, and they would say, well, we have to do the test over. I would have to go down and submit mine because I didn't want to do the machine. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm just too pissed off by the whole need for it in the first place. And they would go and monitor blood pressure and say, hey, you're not, your blood pressure keeps creeping up. So similar in that with the CPAP. I have known a number of other people who did get used to it and but it's absolute madness. And then every time you travel, you got to take it with you. So
Yeah, and I would love to meet some of the people that really get used to it. I mean, I know it does help people, but I put this mask on and I feel like I'm an F-18 fighter pilot trying to go to sleep.
exactly,
And
yeah,
like during this, I mean, I guess some people when they fall asleep they stay in one fixed position. I mean, I don't. So
not either. Cannot imagine that myself.
no, no.
I cannot imagine.
But luckily, through applying the principles that I learned on your channel and then doing a little bit of self experimentation with it, um, I didn't have to go back. And the next time for my yearly checkup, I went back to my doctor. He was looking it over everything, and he was like, "Wow, you've lost some weight." I said, "Yeah, I said I feel great," and he's actually quite supportive. I mean, he said at first, "Wow, that's a little extreme," and I said, "Well, this is just something that works for me." I think a lot of people when they first hear, "Well, you only eat once a day," oh my God, it's
Hmm.
it's, that's not good. That's not. They're just pre-programmed with all this misinformation. But um, at that point, once I started, I got down to as low as 180 pounds, and I kind of fluctuate around there. Maybe I go a little bit higher on my weight range, and then if I do, I just have a little bit smaller of a meal for a couple of weeks and go right back down. But
You go back down. You're tethering. You're or what's the word? Toggling.
yep,
And that's all it is. It's managing your eating, and it's basic. It should be basic, but the fact is, our animal component makes it very difficult to do because when we're exposed to food, the less intelligent we are, then the harder it is because it's hard to override instinct. The same way a dog cannot resist, rummaging through trash and getting whatever's around, whatever their owners give them. The human, if you can't involve your intelligence, your level of control, then it makes it very difficult.
exactly.
And you're taking control of that by exercising the means to manage.
Yeah, and so I mean, you make a very great point. It's and that's one of the key lessons I learned from your channel too. Is you're the one that's in control, and that is what ultimately like OMAD I feel has given me. And when I I losing that amount of weight and seeing how it, for the first time in my life, like it really was not a struggle to do and maintain. I said, you know, I maybe I could go on YouTube and share some of my observations and my journey, and I did that without really any expectations, and it's been a learning experience for me. It's been great, and I've connected with a lot of really wonderful people that um, have, you know, sent words of encouragement or say, hey, you know, I'm going through the same thing. You know, what other advice do you have? Um, you know, so overall, it's I don't, I'm not preachy with it. You know, I don't proselytize OMAD whenever I'm going anywhere, but um, I definitely sing its praises. And
You have a story to tell, and you've actually lost a measure of weight rather than just hearing about it. It's actually something you've been able to incorporate
yes,
into a better version of you. So tell me this: what's your you're a chef. This distinguishes you. What's your specialty, and what has it been like in your professional career, managing food and cooking and, you know, cleaning and food prepping and doing all the stuff you do with your own journey?
well, at first it was a little difficult because when you're in a restaurant, when you're in a kitchen, you're just from the moment you step in to the moment you leave, you're just surrounded by food. But you know, you did a video on disassociation, and that really is kind of worked with me. It's helped in my situation. It, you know, my specialty in cooking is, I guess, probably more New England cuisine. I mean, I live in Massachusetts, but I love making like fresh pastas from scratch, different steaks, you know, fusing different cultures together. You know, in New England, we tend to get a lot of French, Italian, in this area, slightly more Portuguese, you know, Latin American influences. Um, and you know, I when I first started, I didn't realize just how unconsciously I would just walk around and like grab something and just eat it. And
Yeah,
you know,
that's yeah.
you catch yourself doing that, and you're like, okay, no, no, I can taste the sauce, I can do that, but you know, the food is always around, and it's just not my time to eat. You know, there's a difference between tasting it and eating, and you know, I think the stereotypical chef is one that's about, you know, 300 pounds in the back, and um,
Right. They say don't. They joke about don't trust a skinny cook, you know, and laugh about it and everything.
yeah,
But then, yeah, end up with, you know, they end up with, you know, with their own health struggles. And of course, I've seen that. I have seen the chef who's in prison with tats and, you know, got out of prison, and they were some of the best cooks I've ever known. I know that down here in the South, um, some of these young Spanish guys with tattooed forearms and you know, facial piercings, and like you look at them and they're hard guys who've been in jail for different things. They're some of the best cooks I have ever had. Like these next to the San Juan Mission and the Alamo and all of these areas, these young guys who are probably 24, 30 at the most, and they've been locked up for a hardcore crime. Like they're people that you would you would not want to be on the bad side of, but at the same time they learned to cook or something in prison. Maybe before that they had some experience too. Their family had a little Mexican restaurant, some of the best stuff I've ever had in my life, bar none. And I go, now that I'm in Houston, I mean, it's not as prominent. There's not quite as many Mexicans here, and it's a different ball game. But chefs, I guess, there will, you know, have different specialties. So pastas in the Northeast, I have definitely heard about, and I have heard, you know, some of the Portuguese influence and my man. So that hasn't challenged you. Like a lot of people say they can't be around food. How do you react to that? How has that impacted you?
uh, again, you really have to kind of disassociate. I've heard people too saying, well, you know, I make like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for my children. You know, oh, well, I have all I can do to stop from eating it, and I tell myself, and I tell other people, I'm like, "Look, I can have that if I so choose. It's just not my time to eat." And you know,
Exactly.
the example I use is, let's say I call you at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, "Hey, you want to go grab a pizza and a beer?" I mean, the first thing you're probably going to say is, leave me the hell alone. I'm sleeping. But
Yeah.
you're going to say some other form of, well, no, because it's not my time to eat. Well,
Ex-
that's how I feel when I don't need to eat just because it's noon or just because, as a culture, we've decided this is breakfast. I'm going to eat when I'm legitimately hungry, and I'm going to eat. And for me, that's once a day.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So all right, we're back with Alan Hogan, OMAD Dad. So, um, what are some of your staple foods? What are some of the things that you have adjusted that you find yourself coming back to over the normal course of living high, living low, the highs and lows of your everyday life?
There are some things you're always going to find in my refrigerator or freezer pantry. I'm always going to have eggs. I find that eggs are pretty cheap and a pretty good source of food all around. Um, you'll I There are some things that I get higher quality on, like with my butter, for example. I opt for Kerrygold. Um, not just because it's grass fed, but to me it tastes better. So I'll spend a little bit extra money on that. But um, I I try to only have let's say beef of some sort, maybe once a week or so. Um, Usually one of my OMADs a week will be breakfast based. Um, Tuna, like things like canned tuna and things like that, and um, really it kind of varies. Like sometimes, especially now that up here it's starting to get warmer and the farmers markets are opening, I'll look to see what I could get for really good fresh produce. I can, big salads in the summer, and then as it gets colder during the winter, it's more heartier stews or but I try to make as much homemade and from scratch as I can, um, and like I say, I try to have a little bit of a variety, and it keeps me sane.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm looking here, and you did a video on what I eat, part 9. You introduced what you did, different ones that you. Are there any things that you have taken out of your diet, or have you just pretty much minimized the process in the normal fashion that I've kind of how I've taught?
I've minimized, like for example, some people, you know, I used to have an OMAD Dad Facebook group page, and I ended up getting rid of it because it was just I was finding there were so many keto invaders that were like, oh my God, you can't, you had an ounce of carbs. That's it. What is wrong with you now? Uh, so I tell people like I don't have a dessert every day, but when I do. Um, I make it a part of my OMAD. I may say, oh, you know what? I really have a craving for a Hershey bar. Okay, well, it's prepackaged. I know how many calories it is, and I could do it thoughtfully. It doesn't mean well, let's say it's an even better example. Let's say it was a craving for Oreo cookies. Instead of me going and buying a box of Oreo cookies and you get, I don't know, 50, 80, however many are in there, I may end up going to like the little bodega around the corner from me and just getting like a sleeve of the 6 of them or whatever. It's this way here. If it's done, when it's done, it's done, and I don't have it lingering around the house, just kind of tempting me every time I walk into my pantry.
Exactly.
Um,
You're counting the cost, and you're saying, look, I have this, and if this meal is less healthy, perhaps the next one will be more so. And then you're doing your own mental math, and you're saying, here's the way it's going to work out. Worst case scenario, I'm here. Best case scenario, I'm here. And so you're moving forward. Your mind is very organized. I'm looking at your video construction. You follow some of the standard YouTube recommendations. Um, on a lot of this. Your mind is very organized. Like for instance, you'll put OMAD and then colon, and then you'll have the title, so that the makes it easier to find and pull up on the searches. I tend to be, as you very well know, I tend to be pretty abstract and a little bit rebellious and a little bit go my own way. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. So some of the stuff that my approach to things is a little bit knee jerk. I'll run into something and out of experimentation, I'll say, okay, well, let me try that. Just the same way I did. This was a part of my journey years ago when I did try keto, when it was much, much less popular, when I did try Atkins, when I tried Mediterranean and South Beach and all of these things years ago when I was married. And I would run into the same caveats. And then, of course, Facebook is its own animal. And Debbie OMAD, as you well know, has a Facebook group with this sort of stuff. She has all sorts of, some of these ladies who are really big Facebook and they love to try it. And some of them do come from a keto a position, and then others not so much. But you don't know who. A lot of the lines tend to be blurred in that respect, because then you meet casual dieters, you meet a lot of different people who have different approaches, and so ultimately slimming down and trimming down your waist is trimming down your audience. You get people that are focused, and then you get people that are that are on the same page as you, who have kind of the same outlook on the bigger issues. You had one a year ago on hitting a plateau. What are some of the points that you can give for people who are new to OMAD, who are saying, hey, I'm not losing anymore. I went in, the scale's not going down. I'm freaking out. It's not working. What am I going to do?
Well, I always tell them that you have to understand that I don't care what diet or what plan you're on, it's never a straight shot down to your goal. And for me, the difference between OMAD and a regular diet is that when I do hit the plateaus, when things do kind of even out, I at least have the freedom to be able to eat what I want. When I hit those plateaus on, let's say, the paleo diet, I did the paleo diet, and right away I lost 10 pounds, and you get that high.
Yeah.
And then you plateau, and you might be stuck there for a couple of weeks. It's frustrating, and you're looking around like, my God, I'm working so hard on this, and all I'm eating are these 5 items that I'm allowed to eat on this diet. And
You're reminded of that quite strongly. You're reminded of the turmoil that you're facing, because those brain chemicals of hey, this is awesome, have gone away. It's like two people meeting each other, and then you've been together 8 months, and it's not. You start to think about the fact that maybe this person wasn't your first choice, or maybe you weren't theirs, and then all of the fun stuff starts to go away, so the normal tasks get harder. That's the problem
exactly.
with those, which is what knocks people off. It's it becomes a challenge, because your brain is not always going to be your friend. It's going to want to go back to old habits that you have put in place years ago. It's going to happen to want to go back to stress eating and boredom eating and compensational eating. I lost something, therefore I deserve this food, which is a lot of how people think.
Right. And I'm one that's always looking for the middle ground. And you know, so many people today, it's they're playing this hard version of, I guess Alan Watts would call it the game of black and white. Where
Yeah.
they're on their YouTube channels, and they're like, well, we're here because we're going to find the one diet for the human race, and I don't think there is one. I think
No.
I think it's a combination. You've even said, if your town is known for the really great pizza, you're going to eat pizza.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It is. Yeah. You can't move. My first analogy on the channel was you can't, live off of a garden in New Guinea, of course, unless you're in New Guinea. So
Right.
you won't have the same. You're going to eat the way what is around you. It's just one of the cardinal principles, because you cannot. It'd be great to think you could do it another way, but there's going to be super few people who are that eccentric to be able to revamp their life like that. For most people, it would be completely out of the gate.
And
Okay, transitioning into a number of topics here. First of all, what's OMAD slows your metabolism? What's your response to that? Have you heard that from people? What have you said?
well, for one, I want to see evidence of why having a super fast metabolism is really beneficial for you anyway. I mean,
Good point.
think about it. If we were human beings out in the wild, I mean, in other words, not in this modern system. You can go back even 250 years. What benefit would there be to have a metabolism that makes you hungry literally all day when you don't have access to food all day?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's not doable over the long game. Your metabolism takes a high road and a low road, and of course the middle part of that is where you want to be, because if you're revved up and your metabolism is in high gear because you have a high level of activity, that's one thing. If it's in the normal course of life, you wouldn't want it that high. You wouldn't want it ridiculous, but at the same time, there's actually very little evidence that OMAD quote slows your metabolism, and this has been the fear that people have for a long time. Even studies that show during the adjustment period, your metabolism takes a very slight dive, it rebounds, and you end up with a normal average, which isn't far removed from the norm. So you do have your body basically maintains stasis, aka homeostasis. So
Right, and your body your body has a hormone for everything. It wants to, like you said, it wants to reach homeostasis. It's going to regulate things out as best as it can. And I think what we need to do is get out of the way and allow this to happen.
oh, it's exactly right. The same thing with the supplements and taking stuff, and I get people that look for a lot of recommendations on that, and that's why I've been very cautious with any food videos I do. As of the last 2 years, I get people that think that if they just start eating a certain way, they're going to start having certain benefits. And of course, there's homeostasis. There's the fact that your body's going to keep you at a certain range. So it's not going to just drop your blood pressure or drop your blood sugar, not without very prolonged metabolic adjustment, weight adjustment, blood sugar. And it's not a fast thing, because your body has a way of keeping you where it wants you, which is of course why weight loss requires the discipline and life control that it does. And that's what people very often miss.
Sure, and you have to that when I see a family member or a friend or somebody that has contacted me, and you could see usually around 6 months or so they're starting to hit that wall of self-doubt, and I ask them, I'm like, do you see yourself being able to do this for the rest of your life? I mean, it's often people are under the impression that, well, if I just give this 3 months and I lose all of my weight, then I'm good. I don't have to worry about this for the rest of my life.
No, right. Not
I'm
quite.
sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't happen, because, and if it did, it would be a very weird world, because everybody would do. And I tell people, if it were easy, everybody would do it. That's why there are fat statistics. You're going to have people that don't understand that. They can't learn that lesson, and then they start to feel like they're in prison. They can't adjust. They don't realize the sacrifices involved, but
Yep.
the rewards involved. Their brain is just unable to balance it. So let's talk. It's pretty much your floor anyway, but let's talk about the COVID impact, not only in your food preparation industry, but in general. This real quick, Georgia, two Georgia men were hospitalized after drinking cleaning products, hoping to prevent a coronavirus infection. Georgia Poison Control Director Gaylord Lopez told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution the men in Atlanta who had a history of mental health issues are expected to recover after drinking the products over the weekend. Lopez said he does not know if the men ingested the cleaning solutions because of President Donald Trump's musings on whether injecting disinfectants could threaten the virus during a White House briefing on Thursday. The statements provoked an intense outcry from health officials and prompted it goes on to state companies like Lysol, they had to release a statement. Oh my God, we're at the point of releasing statements. Don't drink stuff like bleach.
Which, by the way, is actually on the bottle if they would read it.
Yeah,
It
actually,
clearly says, don't even let this go near your children. But
yes.
yeah.
During, I think it was the 40s or early 50s, they had situations where a cleaning product was reduced. I don't remember the details on this, but there was a hand soap, and people thought it said lemon fresh something, and they thought, oh, you're supposed to drink it. And then a lot of people got sick. So you get these situations where there's so people have been putting stuff on there. The first man, it says, drank about 16 ounces of bleach on Saturday. I'm amazed he's alive. He was treated in a hospital and has since been discharged from a psychiatric ward. Okay, so this appears to be more crazy than anything else. But there are other cases. There's a lady here in There's a lady in Florida. There's a group leader in different parts of the world. Washington Post has a story on a person, fish tank cleaner, a chloroquine phosphate killed a man who we had some people drink in New York and Miami drink bottles of rubbing alcohol. So there's the crazy, and I learned this very early on from the very first woman I coached on my FitnessPal before I even had a YouTube channel. I noticed a lady had been told to eat all ice cream. It was the craziest thing. She was on an ice cream diet and, of course, wasn't losing weight and felt absolutely terrible and was so constipated. And I learned then people will follow all sorts of advice, even if it's perceived advice and not sensible or real at all. And so, expanding beyond that, though, how has your industry been affected by all of this, and what's your take on the whole approach to everything?
Well, I've career-wise, I've since left the restaurant business. I'm still in a cooking capacity as I manage the food program for our area's Head Start, and we have 1,100 children. Excuse me. We have 1,100 children in the program under the age of 5, and our school system has essentially been we're shut down. So there's that aspect. We're still providing services as best we can, and right now everyone is kind of just sitting around looking for the one person to take the lead and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is, and that's not, you have the state agency, or state government rather, the governor. We have the EEC, that licenses the schools, and the school board, and the local health departments, and they're all pretty much just looking at each other, going, okay, like, how do we start this? So they're looking for a lot of what happened is the state is looking at other programs across the country when they reopen and seeing how it goes. So there's that part, and then the restaurant business, that industry. Some of the top chefs and restaurateurs are saying, by the time this thing is over, the economic impact, you're going to see 40% of the restaurants out there just gone.
Yeah, happened down here. We had, I'm in with all the hotels down here. All of these GMs are communicating, and a lot of them are not going to make it. The small, mom and pop, and then up to a good ways into the corporate ladder are not going to be coming back. And then you have the really big ones like Marriott and Hilton and all of these. They have deep enough pockets, so they'll be coming back. But the sad thing is that this has affected people in such a crazy deep way that you will have, the next 3 years are going to determine that it's going to determine a lot. Like, we're going to see I'd be really surprised if we don't see some acting up, some uprising, some struggling, and some poverty crime, and some things of that nature. I really hope I'm wrong on that, but it does appear that we're running into a lot of struggles with the whole process.
The key will be during the fall, if there is a resurgence of this, and if it prolongs any further, people have to understand, safety. You have to. It's like right now, everything is trying to balance the difference between safety and keeping a country economically moving. But what'll be a real nail in the coffin is come December, if businesses can't have a really strong holiday sales. Most businesses ride on, gasoline fumes all year, and then come the end of the year, people going nuts and buying a bunch of stuff. If that doesn't happen because of resurgence of Corona, I don't know. For 2021, it will not be good at all.
Yeah, I have a Nissan Frontier, and it used to be $43 to fill up with normal gas prices. Now I can fill that son of a gun up for $12. Honestly, It's because the gas is just so low right now, and which is scary because it's not supposed to be that way. It's just not. So that, crazy comes on different edges of the spectrum. So you have people that are drinking cleaner, and you have people that that are just kind of really need to be wards of the state because that their minds are not working very well. And then you have people on the other side who say that it's nothing. They say that it is like a myth or a conspiracy. And the same people who are speaking out and saying COVID doesn't exist, and there are actually people that are saying this is a complete myth, that there's no truth in it at all, they're the same people who said that Sandy Hook has have you heard that it's a made up hoax, that everybody, that the kids were, something was done, the government did something with them, that they never existed, that they were made up by the media. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, it's in my earlier life, I was a bit of a conspiracy nut, and at some point though, like something happens to where you like to kind of sometimes just slap you in the face and go, okay, yeah, this is something's wrong with them. I've heard the craziness with the Sandy Hook. It's repulsive. And I have seen plenty of YouTube channels out there who are putting videos out as much as they can, saying that, coronavirus, COVID-19 is a complete hoax and all of these deaths aren't real. And, so what you have too, what becomes, it's like a trust issue. And so I myself, Mr. Average American, I'm not, I'm not going to go and do my own independent investigation and go to a hospital and then go and I've never studied as a virologist. I'm not a doctor. So I have to decide, am I going to take the word of someone who's been trained in this, or am I going to take the word of somebody who works as a truck driver who's telling me, oh, don't worry about it, everything's fine? The choice is yours. Hopefully you make the most educated decision you can.
Right. Now we're going to play a little clip here of, this comes from, it's actually of Sidethorn, a conspiracy theorist guy in Texas, and Conspiracy Granny, another, I guess his common law wife, who go around and they harass these people and they say, hey, you guys are obviously lying. You guys are obviously psycho. And here he is confronting a pastor, saying that the pastor of the what was it, the 2000, a few years ago, the shooting in Bastrop, Texas, that it was a myth. There was 26 shot in a church, which my uncle, who's a constable, actually responded to. And they're saying, hey, this is all a myth. So here's the video. Same people that say that really nothing exists.
This is supposed to be a man of God, but yet he's told the whole world that 26 people died in his church when nobody died. He's a liar. Let's go, Frank. Let's go polygraph right now. I've got a man in San Antonio.
Comment you just made, knowing my 14-year-old daughter's laying.
You're a liar, Frank. You're a filthy liar, Frank. You're a demon, Frank. You should be able to provide the evidence more than anybody on this planet. This guy should be able to provide evidence of a death that happened at this church.
Did you catch that?
Yes. Wow.
He goes up and confronts all of these, and this happened after Sandy Hook. All of these people who are saying, hey, this is all a lie, this is a cover-up, Sandy Hook just is using crisis actors, and they're doing all of this stuff, and then they go up and confront the victims, and the victims sue them for harassment and everything. Well, recently Amazon and different retailers have started taking this stuff off, and then now the issue is a free speech issue. These people have the right to be crazy. They don't have the right to harass people, but now people are responding saying, hey, you can't say that. And that's not helped us with COVID, because you have people who are speaking out about, like I have, about the liberties issue, about government overreach, and saying, hey, you can't keep people in their houses. So it's just become a very unhealthy brood of activity, where you have people who are obviously mentally ill or crazy, and then it's the perfect storm. You get a catastrophe, you get people who don't trust the government, you get mental illness and or some sort of neuroses or paranoia, and then you have the whole mix of it ends up being, and now we have the added ugly side of things being poverty and people being out of a job, which creates a perfect storm for martial law, which is where the real fear is. And I've mentioned on this channel before, if you remember, on one of my older, I think it was one of my first live streams, The Madness of Crowds.
Yes.
The book That's one of the biggest things that if you died, if there was a nuclear holocaust, you would not die of radiation poisoning. Probably you would die of martial law, because cities would become absolute madhouses where people lose control. And of course, what's to loop back around and to come to a close on our topic here. The real thing is self-control. The real thing is staying in charge. The real issue is managing your life and your affairs. Are you able to manage your job? Are you able to manage your marriage? Are you able to manage your kids? Which, by the way, we've talked very little about. You are OMAD dad, and so you have what is it? Two. You have two kids.
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old daughter named Dublin and a 2-year-old son named Finnegan.
That's awesome. That's so. How has OMAD and the walk of self control and self management affected your marriage and your life as a father?
Well, I feel like I have more time. I can put more thought into a meal. I have more time to, uh, you know, deal with the children and do things with them. I couldn't imagine trying to do this and then pump out 3 to 6 small meals every single day. I would just drive. I don't know how I would do it. So it seems like everything kind of aligned, you know, perfectly, and even to the point where my wife kind of joins me on it a little bit. She has a slightly larger window than I would, because I just eat the one meal, but.
Yes.
But yeah, she's joined me on it as well, and she's had great success, and it's you're making yourself. I feel like I'm more available to my children.
Yeah, absolutely true. And that's one of the first things I noticed. I realized how much time I spent eating, how much money I spent eating, and then when that changed, I was just blown away by the fact that I wasn't doing that anymore. I wasn't spending $1,000 on food. I wasn't spending, you know, 4 hours eating, 2 hours per meal. I would usually eat twice to 3 times a very heavy volume of food. And I was just absolutely shocked when that was gone. I was like, wow, I have all this time. I can sit here and I can research something online. I can go to work and do an audit. I can do something productive, and it absolutely blows your mind.
And you don't get that, for at least for me at work, you don't get that afternoon brain fog of, oh, I had lunch, and then 1:30, 2 o'clock comes by and you're just a zombie.
Absolutely, you lose that disgust with that absolute brain fog, that lull after the meal, where you kind of want to sit around, and if you have dirty dishes, you just leave them on the stove because you made just such a mess, and then you're like, oh, I got to go lay down for a couple hours. You don't have that.
Right.
You have control, you have life management, and then you have, after a while, your body starts helping you in your quest to find more food, but it's helping you better your life. It starts to release better, it starts releasing, metabolizing fat, stored fat, so that you have energy and you're not feeling crappy. You're not feeling drugged out. You're not feeling weighed down. You actually feel lighter. And then as time goes on, you continue the betterment.
Right.
The betterment.
And even professionally, when to work in a restaurant, it's 100+ degrees in the kitchen. It's fast paced.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when people come in to eat, they don't want to eat when you get around to it. They want to eat now. They're hungry. So you have to be able to think clearly. You have to be able to move quickly. That's why I could never be, a three, not to knock anybody that's larger, but I could never be a 300-pound chef. It's I could not do that all day and keep up that pace and but living like this, and I have my OMAD usually around between 5 and 6 o'clock at night. I don't have a set window that I stick to. I just eat when it's my time, and then I move on. And by doing this, I'm just more alert.
Okay. What is a guilty pleasure food of yours?
Oh, guilty pleasure. I'd have to say chocolate. I love
That's an all-time. That's always a favorite. That's kind
Uh,
of a minus Twix, minus peanut butter Twix.
a Snickers, you better look out. If there's a Snickers,
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna grab a Snickers, or a chocolate ice cream, like a nice, yeah. But like, even with that, you'll, and this is, I've read this once in the book, French Women Don't Get Fat. It's a true statement. Like in France or something, if they're going to have a dessert, they're going to have a full fat, a really rich dessert. Why? Because you'll be more satisfied. It'll taste amazing, and you'll have
Yes.
a smaller amount of it, and then you're good. If you, I mean, like, here's an example. Like, if I love chocolate chip cookies. When I make my own chocolate chip cookies, if I have one, like, I'm good. But if I can eat 20 Chips Ahoy's and you don't even feel it.
Yes. It's true, but you do get, and that's what people don't realize. If you incorporate healthy carbs or even unhealthy carbs, and you experiment with a spike when your blood sugar goes high, you get the endorphins released, so you feel more, at least for the time, you feel more full. And if you can manage the hunger later, then you develop a healthy response to sugar. So you don't want to develop a binge pattern, but you also can regulate if you will exercise your intelligence to where you say, okay, I can have a candy bar. It's not going to own me. It's not going to rule me. It is simply going to be a part of what I will occasionally have. So you take away the power, you take away the control that it once had over you.
And when doing that, by buying smaller packages of things, you have it, it's done, and
Yes.
it's not, you don't feel like, oh man, I know they're cheap, but I bought those 100-pack of Oreos. Geez, I really hate for them to just get thrown out. Maybe I'll have a
Yeah.
couple. Maybe I'll have a couple more.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. What role has exercise played in your life, if any?
I do exercise. I make sure that I kind of take my grandmother's approach. My grandmother, who's in her 90s and it's still going strong. She looks like somebody maybe in her early 60s.
Oh, wow.
Never stepped foot in a gym. And what she does is she goes and does things around the house.
Yeah.
It's functional exercise. You look at, some of the oldest living humans on the planet who live in the blue zones. They've never gone to the
Yeah.
gym every day either.
No, right.
They get exercise, functional exercise. I love walking. I could go on a walk all day. I love chasing my kids around and carrying them or carrying things up and down, going up and down the stairs regularly. And I find it's very easy for me to get, because I track it, 8,000 plus steps a day without even really trying. So
Functional exercise, having a routine, having a sense of relaxation, having a reward for yourself, that's the ebb and flow of success. It's the ability to have a healthy pattern that is non-self-destructive and pro betterment that also is doable. It's not something that is out of your range. It's not holding yourself to some bizarre goal. It's something that's doable. You're exactly right.
yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add that it's not drudgery, and the whole. It's why every January you see 4,000 people at your local gym, and by the beginning of March you see 40, because you just can't. You get these people who mentally think, well, I have to train for a triathlon in order to take some weight off. You can't keep that pace up.
No, exactly. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to do it. That's the challenge. Once you realize, you start saying, okay, well, it's no longer. You stop competing with yourself. You stop beating up on yourself. You start saying, okay, what's the win here? What the win is to do this X now and Y later, rather than saying I have to do everything. I have to be the hero. I have to, torture myself for past failures and whatnot.
It sells Rocky movies, but in real life,
Yeah. Yes. So, if you had it to do over, would you change anything from the very start of your weight loss?
I'm gonna say no. I have no regrets on this. My first year doing OMAD, I just was very strict with it. And I took my weight off, and then in my second year, I said, I'm gonna experiment a little bit. Maybe a wider window, or maybe you know, when I get into maintenance phase, maybe I'll have extra splurge days, or God, everything, every possible combination you could think of. And I ended up to where now I've hit my stride, and I know what works for me personally, what doesn't work. So I have no regrets, you know. I do recommend people that, you know, don't be afraid to experiment with this a little bit if it's not quite working out for you, or if you're just curious as to what would it be like if I had 2 splurge days a week. Go ahead and find out. And, you know, so what if you gain a couple of pounds? You know, you could always go back to baseline, and you
Exactly,
know,
which is what you just mentioned. That's as you come closer to your goal, your challenge increases because you have less of an impetus to succeed. But at the same hand, you also have the experience of having done it, which means you can re-implement. It's like a thermostat. When the room gets hot enough, the AC is going to cut on, and you're not going to just sit there and sweat. It's going to bump it back up to where the temperature, or down, the temperature is going to stay in a comfortable range. And if you set your thermostat right, you set your temperature right, so you end up with a flow. Well, that is all I have. Is there anything else you want to unpack for us?
no, I think from what, really quickly, I would add on to what we were talking of, not to backtrack, but when you were talking before about you know, untrusting and with COVID and all of that
Yeah.
response. I think one thing I'd like to add is that um, you know, it, we have certain, we don't, we're told that we shouldn't be trusting people, or that our media would lie to us. So the best thing to do would find out the most logical uh, information that you can. You know, the people that, and not to go off on a tangent, but the ones who are saying, "Oh my God, you shouldn't be wearing a mask. That's just an infringement. You're being a slave." Like, no, it's not.
No.
You know, be like, take advice from the people who have done, or people who know. You know, don't base your health decisions on well, you know, don't base, you know, especially with this virus, on the guy that's telling you that the world is, everything is fake. You know, I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah. Right. Well, we don't want to underreact. And what I've said about the whole COVID thing is you should take the measures without fear of reprimand or penalty that you believe are right for you.
and,
So
but
really,
where the real, I think also too, where some of the real fear stems from, you have to just be at awe that we've passed what, over $6 trillion in stimulus, and the average person has gotten what, $1,200.
you're right.
You know, so this is where we really should be focusing on our anger. You know, not, you know, oh, they won't let me go back to work. No, it's, you should be angry that the politicians have decided to let them eat cake, like Marie Antoinette said. And uh, you know, large corporations, some of whom have not even applied for money, have gotten millions. This is just shocking.
Well, the problem there is if that's the logical result. If we tell someone you can't, like if we don't say you can go to work and take a risk, because that's always the way it is. You have the right to smoke. We can't say, well, you can't have cigarettes. We can't say you can't have chocolate because it's bad for you. We can't be a nanny, and that's my issue with, so if you tell people, well, they can't work, then that's going to create all of this. And then as far as printing money, I see that as a logical progression um, of the problem of so yes, we end up in a situation where we have to pay people to keep them from rioting, to keep their house payments on time and the car payments, which are the big items. That, to me, I see as a problem, like as the way we're making it, and the way that viruses travel. You can't tell somebody that they shouldn't get it, because they're eventually going to get it anyway. So and there's actually people out there, and you can look them up, they're trying to expose themselves to COVID because they're saying it's going to be part of the world's, like chickenpox with children, that they're saying and I tend to agree. If a person is not immunocompromised, that's kind of got to be the approach we take. And we might disagree on it, and that's okay. But to me, but I do also share your issue with the problem with just printing money is a problem, and that's just giving people all sorts of things is also a problem. It's going to create problems down the road. So I don't think there's a super easy solution, but I know that I believe that individuals have to look at that and say, hey, here's what I can do. I feel like it's worthy working. This is similar to the flu. People are not dying left and right. They're getting sick and recovering. Some people without any symptoms at all. To me, the best way to handle that is the way that makes sense to you, without resorting to to fringe thinking on either side.
Right. And don't allow, the media to do your thinking for you. Don't allow them to, they're really good at, just drawing us apart in this country. Let's,
Of course.
put a stop to that. Let's be rational. Let's look at things and try and come up with
Right.
the best approach that we can, because some of life's problems may not have the best solution or any solution at all. But,
Right.
as long as we're working together, we're going to get a lot more accomplished that way. And then instead of, creating this, war amongst everybody.
And of course, we have people saying, "Well, it's racism." That's why people are ignoring social distancing, which is, of course, has nothing to do with anything to do with that. But the other problem is, the masks. At first, they said they don't help, and then now they say, "Well, you shouldn't. You should be wearing them." And then it's people are confused, and a lot of times, the whole situation is just made worse by the desire to tribally identify. So to say, well, I'm in the smart crowd, I'm in the in group, I'm in the cool crowd that does this, we're in the orthodoxy that does this. And so our natural tribal nature, and as free thinkers, you and I would agree that the psychology of taking sides is often a thing that is hardwired. So some people are hardwired to take the safe side. Other people are hardwired to disagree and say, hey, I'm the contrarian. Of course, they don't say that. They do that. They say that they end up coming out and saying, hey, this is nothing. I'm just fine. Look at me.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. Our brains create these sort of scenarios because it's a survival instinct. So we say, hey, let's go out here and do this. And then you have the person at work who's very overprotective, and then you have the person at work who is I don't care at all. I'm here to make money. I don't let come what may. Different brain types and different priorities that end up clashing. So
yeah,
it's a mix of it's not a happy party, which is definitely the case. So
yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and wrap up because we're ultimately going to have to bring it to a close. Anything else you'd like to add to the work? Would you like to? I'll of course have your information in the notes. Anything else you'd like to leave for us?
No, I really have nothing to sell or plug. If anybody wants to check me out on YouTube, my name, I go by OMAD Dad, OMAD Revolution. That channel, you definitely should be subscribed to that as well. And thank you, Joe, for having me on. This has been really fun, and I thank you again for doing what you do, because I really sincerely, you've helped thousands of people who have been struggling with something that everyone claims to have the answers to, and they just can't produce the results that you can. And so I thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much, and you have a great day.
Thank you. You too, Joe.